Hello everyone. In today's session, we will be discussing Alexander Solzhenitsyn's novel One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. After Lenin's death, Stalin came to power. Stalin used various means to silence his enemies. The enemies of Stalin and those who opposed the October Revolution were sent to labor camps in Siberia to do free labor. These prisoners were used to build highways, railroads, canals and factories. By 1929, there were more than 1 million people in the camps, most of them political prisoners convicted under Article 58 of the Criminal Code of 1926. This article dealt with counter-revolutionary crimes which were loosely defined as any action against the Soviet state. As time passed and the need for modernization grew greater, the Soviet regime saw the value of the labor camps and sought more prisoners to send there to do free work for longer periods of time. Sentences increased to 5, 10, 15, 20 and 25 years. In the beginning, most of the prisoners were dissatisfied farmers who openly voiced their criticism of the Soviet policy of farm collectivization. Soon, however, many people were arrested and sent to the labor camps because of their religious beliefs, their nationality or their political beliefs. By 1940, more than 12 million workers worked in the labor camps. During World War II, many soldiers, both Russian and foreign, were added to the population in the labor camps. Ivan Denisovich, the protagonist of our novel, had been a soldier and was sent to one of the labor camps during the war. Alexander Solzhenitsyn had first-hand experience in the Soviet labor camps called the Gulag. He was imprisoned from 1945 to 1953 for writing a derogatory comment in a letter to a friend about the conduct of the war by Stalin, whom he referred as Old Man Whiskers. After being released from the exile that followed his imprisonment, Solzhenitsyn began writing one day in 1957. In 1962, he submitted his manuscript to Novy Mir, a Russian literary magazine. The editor, Alexander Twardovsky, was so impressed with this detailed description of life in the labor camps that he submitted the manuscript to the Central Committee of the Communist Party for approval to publish it. From there, it was sent to Khrushchev, who, despite the objections of some top party members, ultimately authorized its publication with some censorship of the text. The novel was subsequently published in Novy Mir in November 1962. The labor camp described in the novel was the same where Solzhenitsyn had served his term. It was located in Karaganda in northern Kazakhstan. Alexander Ivanovich Solzhenitsyn, winner of Nobel Prize for Literature in 1970, was born on 11th December 1918 in Kislovodsk, southern Russia. His father died in an accident 6 months before his birth. Brought up by his mother, he studied mathematics and physics at the Rostov University. While he pursued his studies in the sciences in Moscow, he attended literature classes as well. In 1940, he married Natalia. Soon after his graduation in 1941, the Soviet Union was drawn into World War II, and Solzhenitsyn was conscripted into the army. He served bravely, won several medals, and was promoted to a captain's rank. But in 1945, he was arrested unexpectedly for writing anti-Stalinist comments in a letter to a friend. Solzhenitsyn was given an 8-year sentence. This imprisonment served as inspiration for the novel About a Day in the Life of an Uneducated Peasant Serving in a Labor Camp. Actually, the novel is based on the experiences of Solzhenitsyn himself in the labor camp. Like the protagonist, Ivan Denisovich, Solzhenitsyn too was a bricklayer in the labor camp. In 1956, when Khrushchev came to power and he started publicly criticizing Stalin, Solzhenitsyn's sentence was finally annulled. Many things had changed in the society and in his personal life as well. He wrote his novel One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich in 1959, which was published in the journal Novy Mir in 1962 with Khrushchev's approval. But the novel caused such a controversy that it contributed to Khrushchev's fall from the leadership. Though Solzhenitsyn became very famous after the novel, the tide in his country began to turn on him, and eventually he was exiled to West Germany. Solzhenitsyn's other famous works are In the First Circle, Cancer Ward, and the Gulag Archipelago. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, Solzhenitsyn returned to Russia in 1995. In 1997, Russia established the Solzhenitsyn Prize for Literature in his honor. He passed away in 2008. The action takes place in the early 1950s. All days in the camp are going to be just similar to each other, hence we are going to describe this day as a running commentary. At 5 o'clock in the morning, the reveille sounds and prisoner Ivan Denisovich is in bed wondering if he should get up. He is not one to oversleep, but this morning he is feeling ill. He remembers that his squad 104th might be reassigned to a different work location, one that does not offer any protection from the cold. Thinking that a lenient guard is on duty, he stays in bed. Another guard, however, the Tatar, makes him get up. But instead of taking him to the guardhouse, the Tatar makes Ivan Denisovich scrub the floors of an office. When he is done, he thanks the Tatar for not taking him to the cells and runs to the mess hall for breakfast. He then makes a visit to the dispensary, but he is denied permission to take the day off. Back in the barracks, Ivan Denisovich hides a portion of his bread ration inside his mattress. Turin, the squad leader of the 104th Division, calls them out for roll call. It seems Turin has been able to bribe the authorities out of reassignment. In the cold, Cesar, a young Muscovite filmmaker, smokes a cigarette. He gives the butt of his cigarette to Ivan Denisovich. As the prisoners go through the morning search, Lieutenant Volkovi, who is feared by everyone in the camp, tells the guards to search for those wearing extra undershirts. During the search, Buinovsky, a former naval captain and a newcomer to the camp, protests against the search and offends the lieutenant. He gets 10 days in the guardhouse. The prisoners are counted and led out to their respective workplaces. On the march, Ivan Denisovich's thoughts wander and he thinks about home. The prisoners reach the building site where they wait for the squad leaders to give them the day's work assignment. While he waits, Ivan Denisovich eats some bread he has brought with him. The members of the 104th are sent to work on an unfinished building near the power station. Ivan Denisovich and his working partner Kilgas are assigned to build walls. Turin asks them to first insulate the machine room to make it warmer. They come up with a plan to steal the prefabs from a construction site. After putting up the prefabs, the squad members talk around the stove. Ivan Denisovich's story is further revealed. Officially imprisoned for high treason, the real story is that he was captured by the Germans and somehow escaped. Upon finding his way back, he was accused of being a spy and given a 10-year sentence. If he had confessed, he would have gone to prison. If he didn't confess, he'd die. Ivan Denisovich chose to live. For dinner, the prisoners get the good oatmeal. Ivan Denisovich, due to a cook's miscount, manages to swipe 2 extra bowls. At the table, Ivan Denisovich goes through the ritual of taking out his spoon, uncovering his head and carefully concentrating on every bite. Pavlo, the deputy squad leader under Turin, gives one of the extra bowls to Ivan Denisovich and the other to Captain Buinovsky. After finishing his helpings, Ivan Denisovich takes a bowl to Cesar. At the office, Cesar and another prisoner are discussing the art of film. Ivan Denisovich finds the conversation impractical. On his way back, he finds a piece of hacksaw blade. At the building site, the rest of the squad warm themselves around the stove while Turin tells them the story of his early years before the camp. Then they start work again. The members of the 104th work hard on building the walls. There, the hated building foreman comes and warns Turin that he will be punished for the stolen prefabs. Turin and the others threaten Dare with his life. To save face, Dare criticizes Ivan Denisovich's bricklaying. The end of the workday is near, but Ivan Denisovich does not want to leave the wall unfinished. He and Senka, who is deaf, stay behind to work a bit longer. Before they leave, Ivan Denisovich looks over the wall and admires a job well done. When they get back, the assembled prisoners curse them for holding up the count. The count comes up 1 short because a prisoner had fallen asleep at the repair shop. Upon entering the gates, the prisoners are searched again. Ivan Denisovich offers to save a place in line at the parcels office for Cesar. Just then, He remembers that he has a hidden piece of hacksaw blade. He manages to get by the search without getting caught. Ivan Denisovich turns to the parcels office to stand in line for Caesar. Ivan Denisovich remembers how he used to receive parcels, but then told his wife not to send them anymore. He has learned to do without them. Caesar takes his place in line and tells Ivan Denisovich to have his portion of the supper. Ivan Denisovich fights himself into the mess hall. Supper is thin cabbage stew. As he eats his double portion, Ivan Denisovich observes prisoner U81, an old man who has been in the camps for many consecutive terms. For Ivan Denisovich, this old man is the model prisoner. Camp life has not robbed him of his dignity. After supper, Ivan Denisovich buys 2 glassfuls of tobacco from a prisoner in another barrack. Back in his own barrack, Caesar has the contents of his package laid out on his trunk. One quick glance and Ivan Denisovich knows it's a great package, but he does not envy Caesar too much because a package goes quickly. Everyone has to be given a bribe, a cut. While Caesar and Captain Buinovsky are eating, a guard comes to take the captain to the guardhouse. Lieutenant Volkovi has not forgotten. Then the prisoners are called outside for the evening count. Ivan Denisovich, feeling sorry for the hapless Caesar, helps him hide his package. Before he turns in for the night, Ivan Denisovich talks with Alyosha, the Baptist, a deeply religious prisoner who seems genuinely content with prison life. Alyosha tells Ivan Denisovich that he should pray for his soul. The conversation is disrupted by a recount. Before going to bed, Ivan Denisovich goes over the events of the day. He remembers that many good things have happened and it's been almost a happy day, 1 out of 3,653 days. Ivan Denisovich Shukhov. The main character of the story, Ivan Denisovich, is in the 8th year of a 10-year prison term. Imprisoned unjustly during World War II for treason, he has learned over the years not to be bitter, but live every day for itself. He is the consummate prisoner with the know-how and optimistic attitude to get through the tortuous days. The story follows one day of his life in a Siberian labor camp, from the moment he wakes up to the moment he goes to bed. Alyosha the Baptist. Ivan Denisovich's top bunk neighbor, Alyosha is deeply religious and spends most of his time praying and reading the Bible he has kept hidden in a chink in the wall. Alyosha is content with prison life because it gives him time to think about God and about his soul. Ivan Denisovich respects Alyosha because he works hard, serves everyone, and does not engage in the dubious survival tactics of the other prisoners. Before the prisoners go to sleep, Alyosha shares his faith with Ivan Denisovich. Turin. Turin is the squad leader of Ivan Denisovich's 104th Division. As a 19-year veteran of the prisons, Turin is an adept and respected leader who understands how to manipulate the prison system. Having known Ivan Denisovich since their days at Ust-Izma, Turin personally picks him to join his squad when they transfer to their current camp. Turin was arrested for being a son of a kulak. Kilgas, a member of the 104th, Kilgas and Ivan Denisovich are the top two workers in the squad and are often paired together. They steal prefabs to insulate the machine room and they work together as masons. Kilgas has a reputation for being a joker. He is a ruddy fellow who eats well because he receives 2 packages a month. Although his name is Johann, Ivan Denisovich calls him Vanya. Fetyukov, a former office worker of some rank, Fetyukov is considered the lowest rank in the 104th hierarchy. No one in his squad respects Fetyukov because he is one to lick others' leftovers. He scrounges for anything he can get, not concerned about maintaining any degree of dignity and self-control. In the mess hall, Fetyukov often gets beaten up during fights over leftovers. Cesar Markovich, a member of the 104th, Cesar is a young Muscovite filmmaker of mixed nationalities. He is considered well off because he receives 2 packages a month. Unlike most of the other members of the 104th, Cesar works in an office, a position acquired most likely through bribes. Ivan Denisovich believes that Cesar is an impractical intellectual who can survive only as long as he receives his packages. Captain Buinovsky, Ivan Denisovich's bottom bunk neighbor, prisoner S311. Buinovsky is a former naval captain who acts as though he is still a captain. Despite being imprisoned unfairly, he remains patriotic to the communist authorities and genuinely believes in the Soviet regime. He is a relative newcomer to the camp. During the morning inspection, Buinovsky gets 10 days in the guardhouse for speaking out against the lieutenant. Ivan Denisovich feels sorry for the captain because, with his brash attitude, he will not survive the camp for long. The survival of humanity. Through the character of Zhukov and his actions, Solzhenitsyn demonstrates that humanity can survive even the harshest conditions. Though the prison camp system seeks to destroy, by its very nature, expression of fellow feeling and actions based on morals and ethics, Zhukov and his fellow prisoners maintain their humanity through small acts and rituals. One such act is removing one's hat at the meal. Another is refraining from licking empty bowls. Yet another is giving away some of one's food and expecting nothing in return. Zhukov must work hard to preserve his capability for self-respect and dignity, but throughout the day he does so despite the enormous odds. Eating as a ritual. For Zhukov, the mealtimes are his few truly free moments during the day, and he thinks of them as sacred moments. Through the ritual of removing his hat, Zhukov connects himself to the pre-prison world, and retains his self-respect. Through using the spoon he crafted himself, Shukhov takes control of the meal, making it in some way his own. The minutes of eating are also the time when Shukhov's only concern is himself. Shukhov's practice of ritualizing meals allows him to place even more importance on something that is important to him: the destruction of human solidarity. The Zek's main enemy is another Zek. Throughout the novel, Solzhenitsyn depicts the ways in which competition and conflict between prisoners further worsen life in prison. There is a hierarchy that exists between prisoners who work inside and those who work outside the camp. Prisoners with power, like the cook or building foreman, abuse that power, mostly by taking from or punishing other prisoners. The lack of amenities or even necessities in the camp forces the prisoners to turn against each other in order to survive. Work as means of freedom. The prisoner's entire day, from réveillé to final count, is controlled by the authorities. He is given no choice in what work he does and is not paid. Yet, Shukhov takes pride in the work he does. In working hard at his masonry and taking pride in building a good, strong, straight wall, he is in effect subverting the prison authorities who seek to punish him by making him work. Shukhov instead is gaining self-regard by learning a new skill in prison and making his actions meaningful to himself. Shukhov finds a sort of freedom through work because he is no longer working for the authorities, but as his desire not to stop even when the end of day signal sounds for himself. Time as possession. The main thing stolen from prisoners at Stalin's camps is time, 10 or 25 years of their lives. Because of that, any time they can call their own, in the morning before roll call or even over meals or simply waiting to begin work, is precious. And conversely, any time that they are forced to wait or work extra is considered time stolen from them. This time is precious not just because it is a brief period of freedom, but because the things prisoners like Shukhov do in their free time, earning money and favors by repairing shoes, for example, are necessary to their survival in the camps. Solzhenitsyn's novel is written in the slang from the concentration camp and in the vocabulary of the Russian peasant. To express this in English translation, the translators have used American slang such as can and cooler for solitary confinement and unpolished diction in expressions like let them through and get out of the way. Russian obscenities never before printed in the Soviet Union were for the most part translated into their English equivalents. One day in the life of Ivan Denisovich was specifically mentioned in the Nobel Prize presentation speech when the Nobel Committee awarded Solzhenitsyn the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1970. Solzhenitsyn had also written 4 more books, but the publication of One Day led to the controversy of his publications. In 1968, Solzhenitsyn was accused by the Literary Gazette, a Soviet newspaper, of not following Soviet principles. The Gazette's editors also made claims that Solzhenitsyn was opposing the basic principles of the Soviet Union. His style of writing was found controversial by many Soviet literary critics, especially the style of One Day. This criticism gave rise to further accusations that Solzhenitsyn had turned from a Soviet Russian into a Soviet enemy. Therefore, he was branded an enemy of the state. He, in addition, was accused of de-Stalinization. The reviews were particularly damaging. Solzhenitsyn was expelled from the Soviet Writers' Union in 1969. He was arrested and then deported in 1974. The novel had sold over 95,000 copies when it was released throughout the 1960s. With this, we come to the conclusion of this session. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.